Welcome to Spark Science, where we explore stories of human curiosity. My name's Regina Barber DeGraaff, astrophysicist and pop culture lover. My guest host today is Russell Pearce, and he's also a fellow physics lover and belling hamster. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Have you been on video before?
Like home camera, I think. But, yeah.
Well, we are usually on radio on KMRE 102.3 FM in Bellingham, but today we're on video, as you can see here. I'm very pleased to welcome Kyle Rader, computer scientist, entrepreneur, and world traveler. And today we're going to talk about augmented reality and what is it and how do we use it. So welcome, Kyle.
Thank you very much. It's cool to be here.
That's awesome. Do you like our background here?
I think this is apt.
Yeah, it is.
This background here, yeah.
This non-real apt. It's a non-real background. So I brought you here today because our show, we really want to help everyone kind of get interested in science and make science like less intimidating. And I find augmented reality intimidating. So hopefully you can help us with that.
Hopefully I can.
Okay.
It's still kind of intimidating to those of us who have done it for a living. So.
Okay. So before we get into what even that term means, I want to go into like background.
That's a big question. How did I get into science?
Yeah. Or computer science.
Computer science. So, I mean, I grew up in Redmond in Microsoft's backyard.
Right. They have a big
It's
backyard.
also Amazon and Google and Boeing's backyard. So I grew up as a Boeing family.
Right.
And both my parents are engineers. My dad went to NC State. My mom was at Caltech doing applied math.
What's NC State?
North Carolina.
That's what I thought. Okay, just make sure.
And so I kind of grew up with very, very heavy engineering influence.
Right.
And when I was in third grade, I was like, I'm going to major in math and everything. And
why third grade?
That's just kind of when I remember starting to really think about it.
So when your consciousness started?
Yeah, my mom tried to teach me algebra very early, like in third grade.
That's what I'm doing with my daughter.
And
she's in second grade, though.
Good luck. It didn't work for me.
Right.
But so when I got to high school, my mom was also a programmer, so she had taught me about some programming languages and things, and I was fortunate enough to have a high school that had a lot of career-based courses that you could take as your high school electives.
Because it was in the middle of like
it was in
Northwest Silicon Valley.
Yeah, this is Northwest Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It was in Sammamish.
Okay, yeah.
East Lake High School. So.
Right.
So I took all of these computer-based classes on web programming and HTML and how to use Photoshop and how to do game programming and Visual Basic and all this stuff. So when I came to Western, it was after having consulted some friends who work for Microsoft Research, and they highly recommended I go get a general degree in computer science based on what I like to do. So.
Wow.
So then I came to Western and declared a triple major in math, computer science, and
where we are
electronics.
filming right now, we're at Western Washington University, just to let our viewers know.
Yep.
And we will come back to how that experience was, but I'm going to take I'm going to veer over to Russell here,
Please.
who also went to Western Washington University.
True.
That's like this table is just Western Washington University alum. And yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, this is what it looks like here. But how did you get into science? Because you are a scientist.
That's true.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
I mean,
Those are the rumors on the internet.
I would say I'm a bit more everyman in this respect. that my beginnings were maybe a little bit more humble. My like when I was little, my dad laid carpet, and my mom was a sort of housewife, I guess, and up to a point until I got a little bit older. But so my folks weren't exactly necessarily educated. Not that they weren't curious people who realized that sort of education is important, but I didn't necessarily have that background. And so, but I was always curious, and I always sort of loved to be out in nature and sort of wonder, I guess, in general, that's the main criteria for getting into science. And
was there like a moment that like you were like, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, but it didn't really come until I ultimately went to college because, so post-high school, I worked in construction until I was 25 and had a few injuries that made me decide, let's get out of this sort of really physical realm and occupation and
So you started when you were 25 in undergrad.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And
So you're a older student.
yeah, I was like sort of semi-non-traditional, still
Yeah.
basically a kid, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I was always really into reading books, and I initially came in thinking I was going to be like an English major or something like that.
And then you went to physics.
And but I had, well, so I had, of course there were math requirements I had to take, and I sort of rediscovered, or really not even, I shouldn't say rediscovered, I discovered math. And then I read Shirley or Joking Mr. Feynman and realized this is the way to go. And it's been really fun ever since then. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So that's crazy interesting. I knew both your stories before this, but putting you right next to each other has been I like the contrast.
Yeah.
So as a physics major, we have to take some computer science, but it is incredibly minimal.
Yeah.
Incredibly minimal. So how did you get into augmented reality? Like being a student, what's the path to get there? And like a lot of people do game design and stuff like that. Is there a link?
I would say that there right now is maybe a link between people who are interested in game programming and who want to do augmented reality, but purely because of the sort of inherent low-hanging fruit that augmented reality has with the gaming industry.
Right.
That people immediately feel like this is going to be great for gaming.
Right.
Now that's not necessarily false or misplaced. The gaming industry has always, like the military, actually been on sort of the forefront of certain areas of technology.
Right.
So there's certainly a connection there. And as you'll see, most of the augmented reality advertising that people can really experience in a tangible way are games.
Right.
You look at, particularly in virtual reality, you look at most of the virtual reality applications today are gaming. The HTC Vive is having massive success here.
What is that, HTC Vive?
The HTC Vive is sort of the latest and greatest in virtual reality technology. So Facebook spent $2 billion acquiring the Oculus product.
Okay.
And they've put a lot of money and time and effort into developing that.
What is that?
The Oculus Rift is one of the first most well-known virtual reality headsets. We call them face bricks because
bricks.
And we'll get into this a little bit more, but when you're doing virtual reality, it's like taking a screen like this, putting some special lenses over it, and then doing this.
Right.
That would be like Google Cardboard.
Right, and Google Cardboard is sort of the mockery from Google to Facebook. That Facebook went and spent $2 billion developing this huge, awesome headset, and Google developed something that you literally fold out of cardboard, slide your phone into, and have nearly the same experience.
Oh, wow.
We should have gotten some of those.
So
I'm sorry, listeners.
Have you tried, not to go off on this tangent, but have you tried both of them, I guess?
Yeah.
And how do they compare?
Virtually the same, right?
They're more or less the same kind of experience, except that the physical experience is a little different because Oculus, you're wearing a big headset and you can run much more powerful games because you're plugging this big tethered headset into a pretty powerful gaming laptop or preferably a desktop.
And cardboard doesn't carry current.
Cardboard's running off of your phone.
Right.
Your phone's not good at doing intensive graphics.
Right.
Virtual reality and augmented reality today are all wrapped up in graphics processing.
Okay. What is the difference? I just keep on hearing, I know you've said to me so many times that I like the word or the phrase augmented reality, and my primitive brain keeps on falling back into the word virtual reality.
Right.
So
okay.
what?
Should I've completely dodged your question of how I got into augmented reality. Which I can answer
we can
if
come
you
back
want me
to.
to.
We can come, this
back
is
to
a
that.
pretty important question,
Okay.
I think.
So let me give you a simple answer.
Yeah. I like simple.
Yeah. So VR, you block out the real world entirely.
You're smothered,
and
basically.
you immerse yourself in a what is a fully virtual world.
It's very claustrophobic.
Maybe.
Yeah, it is.
For some people, add that to the list of nausea, disorientation, etc. Augmented reality differs in that when you put on an augmented reality headset, you are not blocking out the real world. What you're doing is you're putting a transparent screen in front of you and overlaying digital content on top of what you normally see.
Right. So like this
everything
image
hard.
that I have from Pokémon Go, like this one right here. Like this one right here?
Right.
For
So-
our listeners, I'll try to post this as well. Like this?
So, like this,
Okay.
not using like in the 21st century version, but actually as
Similar to.
that is a similar to.
Yeah, similar
not-
to.
Exactly. And so what you just showed, the Pokemon Go thing, I'll get into Pokemon Go eventually here.
Yes, we
Pokemon
will.
Go is an example of augmented video, not augmented reality.
Okay.
So when everyone who says Pokemon Go is an augmented reality game, you can tell them, no, it's not. It's an augmented video game.
Okay.
You're not augmenting reality because you're not overlaying content on what you see. You're overlaying content on what a camera sees. And there's a huge difference
Oh.
in the experience and how much you can do with that and how perfect you can make it look. So,
Okay.
that's the difference between AR and VR. So I said earlier, the HTC Vive is having massive success. And the reason for that is because of their inputs. So inputs or input devices, I should say, are a huge factor in both VR and AR. And the HTC Vive did something which slowly the rest of the industry is going to discover, and this is what we've been doing at my AR company mentally for the past year, is thinking that any good VR or AR experience is going to rely on extremely good tracking. Now,
Okay.
this is something that Microsoft knows and did well. Unfortunately, their HoloLens product, the first one is kind of a proof of concept, and it's not great as a commercial product because of a number of things. The price point's extremely high, intentionally as a barrier to entry. The field
Yeah.
of view is very, very small.
Microsoft intentionally making things priced high? That's
Right.
crazy.
So,
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I do want to get into like the industry. How did you get into augmented reality? What is your company doing? And those kind of questions. So
Okay.
we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and answer those questions.
cool.
Welcome back to Spark Science. We're here with Kyle Rader, and we're talking about augmented reality.
So we were just talking about kind of like the big players in augmented reality. But before I want to go continue on with that discussion, I'd like to kind of ask you, how did you get into this, and what are you doing at your company?
Right. So, I'll answer those in reverse.
Sure.
So I've actually left the field of augmented reality as of a month ago.
You're 25, so you're like, I left it
For-
for a decade, came back.
Right.
Sorry,
just recently, I moved back to Bellingham for more personal reasons, but I still very much love augmented reality. How did I get into augmented reality? I was an undergrad at Western from 2010 to 2014, and during which I held 5 or 6 different programming jobs around Bellingham.
Yeah.
So I've hopped around a lot as I'm figure out what I like to do and the kinds of teams I like to work on.
Were these real jobs, or were they internships? Or did you just apply to a job while still getting your undergrad degree?
One was an internship, and the rest were all sort of normal jobs. Some of them part-time, some of them full-time.
So would you tell our watchers and listeners to get a degree in CS? It's pretty lucrative.
It's pretty lucrative.
Yeah.
That's not false. However, I would say that if you want to get into computer science, you shouldn't inherently do it just because it's lucrative.
Right.
I won't fault anyone for doing that, though. It's obviously a well sought after field. It's not easy, though, and I think the last stats I saw were less than 3% of college graduates are getting CS degrees. It's
Wow.
typically a hard degree at any university, and it takes a certain kind of person and mindset, and I think great computer scientists can come from anywhere, but it's not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So typically the first year of computer science is a series of brain retraining for people, because it really is a method of problem solving
Right.
at its heart.
We say that in physics as well.
Yeah.
You're training your brain to think a certain way.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not only that it's very challenging to really learn problem-solving skills, but it's also, and this is an issue all over STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, math, but it's also very narrow, the demographics that are in that department and the culture of that department. Sometimes there's
Yeah.
issues with that as well, but.
Yeah, those are slowly changing.
They are. They're getting better. Slowly.
Slowly changing. I can say though, in the 6 years that I've been at Western, which to follow up, undergrad was 2010 to 2014, and I'll be finishing the master's in computer science here within the next year. Over the 6 years I have been here, I've seen dramatic change in Western's computer science department, growing both culturally and demographically.
And just more welcoming.
Yeah. Just all around the community has grown, and I think is much stronger now than it was when I started.
Right.
So that's been very encouraging, and I've loved every minute of being a part of that as well. So
yeah, because I want to say to our listeners and our watchers that Kyle here has been very instrumental in many student clubs and has supported and helped a lot of students stay and retain a lot of students in computer science, and that's been really great. So, but I do want to come back to what you were saying. So you had all these jobs. All around Bellingham.
So I was last. Just a little over a year, like a year and 2 months ago, I was at one job, and I was thinking about finding something else to do because I get bored easily. And I had met an ex-Microsoft executive named Nigel Burton, who you can Google.
Does he have a Wikipedia page and all that?
I don't think he has a Wikipedia page, but he was at Microsoft for upwards of 23 years.
Wow.
He started in London when he was in his 20s, and then moved to Microsoft HQ in Redmond. And so he retired from Microsoft in 2013 after having been at Microsoft for a long, long time, and between the mid 2000s to like 2011, actually moved his family to China and worked at Microsoft Beijing for 6 years, and then stayed in China for an extra year, and then came back. So he had a house on Lopez, and he had recently retired from Microsoft, and he is the kind of guy who likes to be active and solve problems, and he got bored, retired on Lopez, and wanted
Lopez Island for our listeners and watchers.
And he wanted to go do something cool, so he looked at a bunch of hot tech areas: AI, robotics, quadcopters, 3D printing, AR, and was like, AR is the coolest one, I'm gonna do that. So he founded a little company called Atlas.
He was just like founded.
On Lopez Island.
Wow.
Like teeny tiny office. And he did that for about a year, and then he was having trouble finding developers on Lopez Island. Right. Which is, for reference, Lopez is the kind of place where everyone on the island knows everyone. If not, someone knows everyone, and it's only one hop to cover that population.
It's not very big.
Not very big. Yeah. So he decided he didn't want to move to Seattle because it's a long ways away from his house. It's a big commute. There's high competition for developers. Right. Similar story in Vancouver. BC, just north of us. And so Bellingham's kind of right in the middle of Vancouver, BC, and Seattle.
It's almost exactly in the middle.
Almost exactly in the middle, and has I would say, a present and growing technology community, and 3 colleges, all of which have cool technical programs. Western's has a reputation for its computer science program.
There's the Northwest Indian College too, so there's 4 colleges.
There's the Northwest Indian, I'm sorry, there's 4 colleges. So there's a lot of kind of youth and energy around Bellingham and Whatcom. So he decided to come to Bellingham, and the day that he had moved here, I met him at a Technology Alliance group meetup.
Oh, the TAG.
TAG,
yeah.
So I met him.
Those are very good.
I met him at a TAG event, and we got off great, and I met his head of HR, and then several months later, like I think it was about 8 months later, as I was thinking about leaving that current job I was at a little over a year ago, their head of HR reached out to me and was like, hey, we need someone to really come help us buckle down on our software development lifecycle and really managing our software team and helping build product. Yeah. And I was like, I'm interested. Yeah. And so I had coffee, and then I chatted with Nigel, and in the span of a month, I started contracting for them, and a month later, I came on as a full-time employee.
And then how long after that did you go to Shanghai for 3 months?
So then it was, so when I came on, Atlas was currently contracting with one AR company who was producing actual hardware.
So the hardware you're talking about are like kind of goggles.
Yeah, so now we'll get into
AR goggles.
And I shared a couple photos with you,
Yeah.
Which I know Russell hasn't seen, so I'll see if I can just pull this up real
And
quick.
we'll edit this, students, so that
So that
in these
their
videos
photos
we'll
come
see
up.
these photos. And for our podcast listeners, we'll put those on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, so this is This is the first set of AR glasses that I got to work with full time, and
Yeah, so they kind of look like
bug eye
yeah.
goggles.
Well, they kind of look like chemistry goggles
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
with a fatter frame.
Yeah,
That's what they kind of look like.
Or
So-
I could see snowboarding with those on.
Yeah, snowboarding goggles.
yeah, some kind of goggles, snowboarding
And then
goggles
like a
would be
Pikachu
cool
comes out at you.
Right.
while you're snowboarding.
Yeah.
So
He's
you have to
snowboarding
catch
with
them all.
you.
There's
Yeah.
no choice.
So like as you're wearing these goggles, and I saw in your picture that the reason I said it looks very like chemistry goggle is because it is clear. It's like a clear lens. So
right, you see through them.
right, you're seeing through them. So you're seeing your surroundings, and then something's layered on top of that. Is that the
Yes.
goal? Okay.
Yes. And so I can't go into the exact. Well, I have to think about what details I can actually
What's
share.
proprietary?
So yeah.
Yeah.
So
But you're gone now. You said you left them. So and you're gonna do robotics next, right? And then we're gonna have you back on.
probably.
Okay.
So the AR glasses that I got to start working with Atlas were produced by a company called IMMY, IMMY, IMMY Inc. And that was a really, really unique experience because when it comes to AR products, there are a couple of really big things. In VR, it's kind of like field of view. Everyone's got really big field of view, and they're like, what's the resolution and what's the frame rate and all this. In AR, it's all about field of view first and foremost.
Okay.
And the reason that's important is because in VR, it's very easy to have 120, 190 degree field of view, right? You can just put a big screen here, and you can put these really fisheye lenses in front of your eyes so that you see everything. But that distorts the virtual reality that you're seeing, so it's
Right.
not actually realistic. It'd be more like, our normal field of view is 2 degrees we see in like ultra high definition, and then beyond that, it's between sort of like 60 to 80 degrees is kind of low def, our peripheral vision, and then beyond that, it's really hard to see.
Yeah.
Right, and so once you're past 120 degrees, it's really hard. So if you put a 30 degree AR set of glasses in front of your face, it looks really small because it sits right kind of in the center of your vision, but it doesn't quite cover the peripheral that you want to have content on.
Okay. And so you said 2 degree. Do you mean 20 degree?
No,
So 2. Just 2.
2
Wow.
degrees is what you see in high
High
def.
def. Okay.
Yeah. So there's one concept that we, throw around is like, is there in the future going to be ways we can dynamically render the resolution based on where you're looking?
Right. Because you went from like 2 to 60. So I was like,
Right,
what's
2,
between?
60. So let's go over the degrees real quick.
Yeah, yeah. So what's between 2 and 60 was my question.
So about 20. So let's start with Google Glass, because Google Glass was one
Yeah.
of the early on
So
AR kind of
So
products.
for our listeners and watchers, the Google glasses basically they look like normal glasses with that tiny little
normal
glass
glasses
window
with
on
a
the top right.
Right, with a mono prism display.
Right.
The Google Glass uses what's called a waveguide, so it projects light down the side of the what we call the temple arm of your glasses, and then it uses a waveguide to change the direction of those light rays and redirect them into
Back
your
into
eye.
your eye. Yep.
And now, while I'm on the subject of waveguides, because of the way light works, because of photonics, you can only change the direction of light with waveguides so many degrees, because when you do that and you pass the light through these plastic materials, it changes the physical nature of the light waves. and so it changes the speed at which they're traveling.
Yes.
And this ends up causing something called chromatic distortion, where the color of your image will start to blur and do weird things.
Right. Because
which you guys know more about than I do.
different colors of light have, they travel at different speeds as they're going through that material, right?
Right.
So that's how you can get white light and turn it into a prism. Turn it into a spectrum
Into a spectrum.
from a prism. But yeah,
Which
go ahead.
is like the image we see on physics books.
Yeah, it's and like Pink Floyd albums.
Pink Floyd.
Jinx. Yeah.
Who owes whoever Coke? But
Yeah. It's punches. But
So with a waveguide system, when you're trying to project your image and you're guiding that image with waveguides, you can only turn it so much. And what that results in is you can only get so much field of view. You can only have so wide of an image.
right.
And so the Google Glass is only about a 15-degree field of view. So anyone who's tried Google Glass knows it's kind of like a little screen floating here. And because it's monocular, it only sits over one eye,
Right.
there's no perception of depth.
Right.
So you just see this little floating HUD or heads-up display
Okay.
in front of one eye.
I almost feel like, I've never even tried it. I almost feel like it's almost cliche now. Like that's old news, Like,
I don't know if cliche is.
right, not maybe
The right
cliche,
word, but
just
it's-
not cool anymore.
It was the
Was it
first.
ever cool?
Yeah. I think
Well, it got
was.
turned. That term glass holes kind of did a
Cut
number
on
on
pretty
Google.
quickly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, caught on pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I get it. Go ahead.
There was a whole bunch of stuff about it had a camera on it and people
Oh.
didn't somehow someone wearing a camera and walking around and looking at people invades people's privacy.
Except when your camera, you can just be like your
there's-
phone,
there's
and you're just like doing
cameras
this.
everywhere
Yeah.
already, so
Yeah.
I didn't really understand why that disturbed people so much.
Right,
But
I think they're just looking for reasons, probably, because they felt like it's douchey or whatever.
It's
but-
because it was lots of money and they didn't have any.
Yeah.
That was my reason I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I will straight up say that.
that's true.
honest.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where some people think AR started.
Right.
Kind of there.
But where did it really start?
But it started with a man whose name I'm going to try to remember, back in the 80s, who's been developing wearable heads-up display technology for like 30 years.
Oh, is he the guy who got his PhD where he was like integrated his own life with the thing he was wearing and like?
Probably.
Yes.
I'll
Oh
Google
my
his
God.
name if I can't remember.
Oh, I totally think I know who you're talking about.
He's done talks at AWE and stuff.
And like he doesn't ever take it off. Like he.
Yeah, and he's like always wearing it.
Yeah.
He's got these like black goggles that like.
Yeah. And he did
These
his
cool things.
he did his defense with it on, and they're like, well, isn't
He
that
did.
cheating? And he's like, well, that's part of my,
That's
thesis.
part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's done a lot of very interesting things. Like he is the one who actually came up with HDR,
Okay.
which is like everyone's iPhone can take HDR photos because of the father of augmented reality.
Wow.
So fast forward. So
Yeah.
he was doing stuff at MIT for a long time with their wearables division lab. I don't know what it's called.
Something like that.
Something like that.
It was in the 80s. It was before you were born, so it doesn't
So you
matter.
had the Google Glass thing starting to put content on top of what we normally see. Then you have Sony came out with Sony and Epson in kind of combination came out with a pair of glasses that were dual display.
And when was this? What year was that?
This was my history is a little bit rusty on this. This was in between 3 and 4 years ago.
Okay, so
I want to
like
say.
that was my question. Like within the last decade, within the last 5 years, like
Yeah, just much more recently.
got it.
All within the last decade, for sure.
Okay.
So you have Epson and Sony came out with these glasses that have a 23-degree field of view,
Okay.
which is real small, but you could put content and you could do depth because you have 2 images now. So that was big. And they caught on, and they're still around, and they're making glasses, but when it comes to the AR experience, it's not very good. Nigel's company tried those early on.
Okay.
And so from there, there's a company called Meta, and Atlas was actually the very first outside software company to work with Meta. I used to have their 3D printed, the very first 3D printed model of the Meta glasses. Meta is big now because of the Meta 2, which is claiming to have a 90-degree field of view.
Whoa, that's a big jump.
For AR glasses, they claim that they're going to ship Q3 or Q4 of this year for about $1,000. So we'll see if that happens.
Okay.
And so that's a big bulging display. You can find photos and maybe throw them in the video.
Yeah.
This is the Meta 2.
This is the Meta. Then that's coming out like this year, you're saying?
Maybe.
But
That's
soon,
what they claim.
but soon.
Soon, probably within the next 2 years. It'll
Okay.
definitely be out.
So I want to take a quick break because when I come back, I want to talk about like what content is in these goggles that we have, and then also how is augmented reality, virtual reality been kind of portrayed in pop culture, and like how is that close to where we've actually gone? And how much of it do you like, and how much of it you just horrible, do not like at all? All right, so we'll come back with all those questions being answered.
Cool.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I hope.
Welcome back to Spark Science. We're here with Kyle Rader, again, still talking about augmented reality. And so I was curious, we were talking about all these different companies sort of doing different things, improving field of vision, et cetera. But I'm sort of wondering about the application. And so I can imagine different companies have different mission statements with the development of their devices. And so, because I can easily imagine, say, someone who wants to develop a device that allows surgeons to work more efficiently and more safely, or something like that. So, can you speak, I guess, to the mission statements of any countries of intrigue, companies of intrigue?
Companies of intrigue.
Yeah.
I don't know the mission statements exactly of some of the big players, but I can definitely speak to what various people have tried to do. So you mentioned surgery. One of the reoccurring requests that we had at our company, which I worked for a company that in the end we were called RealMax, and we were an American company that was partly owned by a Chinese company. And so, which is why I was in Shanghai for 3.5 months this summer. So RealMax's mission statement was to deepen people's understanding of the world through augmented reality. And what it really boiled down to was, for us, was how do we enable people to grasp complex things, ideas, concepts in a visual and a hands-on way. So it had a lot to do with education. How do we use AR to improve our education of things? So instead of reading about atoms or the solar system or how RNA replicates DNA, if I remember that biology correctly.
I never took
Whatever.
I probably didn't.
Yeah, we didn't take biology.
If I could visualize
No,
that.
but I know Gamow sort of was the one that figured out
I remember
sequencing RNA,
Oh, really?
which physics grad.
Right. So you were saying, so instead of that, you can like maybe experience it.
Right, if we could experience that stuff and actually have it be interactive, like what happens to this atom if I pull away an electron? What's happening to the elements, right? What happens when I visualize protein changes, protein chains, right? So there's all kinds of stuff we can do, particularly in STEM, and I point to STEM because it's what I know, and because I know there are lots of very complex things that are currently hard to visualize.
Right.
And we try to visualize them with applications that render 3D things on 2D screens, but it's not the same, right? It's really not the same watching a video of proteins folding opposed to having the physical models, right? And that's why we have physical models.
Right.
But those are big and clunky and can be expensive. So coming back to the surgery, one of the big requests we got at RealMax was actually not for live surgery applications, although that definitely was on the table. It was actually for training. So when surgeons are in training, they use these animatronic patients that are on tables that are upwards of $100,000 a piece, and the animatronic patient will exhibit symptoms, and it can move and react, and they can literally perform surgery on this fake thing, on this fake person. And so, as you can imagine, the UW Medical Center would love to have more of these, but they're
Yeah.
what else can you do with $100,000? Quite a
Buy a house.
you can buy.
No, that's not true. I don't
That's
think.
not true.
Not true.
Half a house.
Depending
Ish,
depending
a
on
bad
the
house.
thing. Yeah. You could do a lot. So it would be really great if they could take a normal table and augment
Right.
a patient, right? That a student could then put on a pair of AR glasses, where the glasses maybe are expensive and cost $3,000. That's a lot better than a $100,000 table. So suddenly you can have a whole room of people all participating in an exercise simultaneously. Not only that, but they can also be getting what we call like telepresence. So you think about Star Wars holograms. That's an application that we were working on. Yeah. Where you project someone into your augmented world, but they're in some other physical place and you're augmented into their world.
That's this. If I could just break in for a second, that makes me think of this idea that I saw somewhere out there that part of the separation between something like Pokemon Go and actual augmented reality is this sort of shared experience. It almost got the sense that it was about gaining more about perspective than location, sort of. And but I just thought of that because of picturing a bunch of people practicing surgery on nothing.
Yeah. So it can look kind of weird, right? When you have no context for what that person is seeing over there, particularly if they're in VR and they're over there, with the face background and they're doing stuff with their hands, and you're just watching them like, are they swatting bees or what?
Right.
So
They're building
yeah, they're doing
a
something.
protein chain.
So maybe I think
Anyway.
Advocates of Pokemon Go. We'll come back to Pokemon Go when we talk about.
Pop culture.
Yeah,
Pop
sorry,
culture
it's
and
just-
content.
It's on everyone's lips.
But
you know.
when
Yeah.
it's hot right now,
Yeah.
it's gonna pass.
Is it?
Um,
That's what they said about Pokemon
Until-
25 years ago.
until Pokemon
when you were
Go.
born. Yeah.
that's true. Let's be clear. I collected Pokemon cards when I was in second grade.
Right.
Um,
You're just abandoning them now. That's cool.
correct.
Yeah.
I knew more about Chim Pokemon.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense to everyone here?
Me, but it's because I'm old like you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But sorry, you were saying.
Yeah,
So-
I
so-
distracted you with this
So the
thing,
surgery is like a great example of stuff. And Google Cardboard was actually in the news last year for allowing a surgeon to visualize the status of a patient, which was great because he could manipulate it and see something in 3D in front of him in a way that the existing technology on screens could not. And it helped save a child. And so it was a big news break, it was a big news story that was like, here's a positive thing about AR.
I love that it's the most hoi polloi version of all that does it. But yeah.
Yeah, so a little better than Pokemon Go, I think. But so anyway, so we were talking about applications in mission.
Yeah.
So RealMax's mission was really about how do we help the world with AR? And I think if you're in AR, there's a constant sort of question of, am I doing this because this is the coolest shit I could be doing right now?
Beep.
Or, or is it because this is a really helpful technology that actually solves real world problems? And that was a question I had to think about myself. And because for me to really be invested, I kind of have to be on the side of, this is a technology that's solving real world problems and is making the world better today, versus just being an arbitrary visionary and coming up with cool tech that is going to drive the way we do everything 10, 20 years from now.
Right.
So that was kind of our mission statement, was help the world, deepen people's understanding, in a lot of RealMax's early customer segments had to do with education, and particularly education in China, actually, where currently I think AR is exploding much faster in China than it is in the US.
Oh, really?
Pokemon Go was kind of a big thrust for the US. Before Pokemon Go, China I think was already quite a ways ahead. Like virtual reality was very commonplace in China.
So in spite of the cringe factor for Pokemon Go, right?
You're saying.
In spite of that, sort of that sort of misuse of the term AR for Pokemon Go, does that also, just that thing coming out, make you sort of feel like, oh, we're gonna get like funding and this is really gonna go off? Like,
RealMax was looking at actually working with Niantic, if possible, out in the future. But
which is the company
which is the company that
does
built
Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
It would be really, really cool to see RealMax become the first company to do actual AR for Pokemon Go. That would be huge. I can't comment on the status of any of that because I don't work there anymore.
But outside of that, I just mean, like, as someone in the AR field, do you see the explosion of something like Pokemon Go, even if not quite AR, as a good indicator that like this field is going to get pushed even faster?
Absolutely, very, very strongly so, for a very specific reason. In the month leading up to the launch of Pokemon Go, what my primary job was architecting a software solution for augmented reality and what we called digital or augmented real estate. And I was literally, RealMax still is envisioning a future where we have augmented real estate, which in, I think it's Werner Vinge's book on, I can't remember what it's called, but he talks about, maybe it's not even Werner Vinge, I can't remember. People who know this are going to look at me and be like, you don't know what you're talking about.
I doubt it.
This guy wrote a book,
I am now.
and he talks about belief circles, where in Regina's belief circle of Pokemon Go, she walks down the road, and when there's augmented points of interest, she sees a Pikachu, or
I wish. Only got one of those.
Charizard, or I don't.
Jigglypuff is another one I think
Yeah.
I've heard
It's okay.
of. Yeah.
I'm walking down the road, and I pass the same physical point of interest, but in my belief circle, in my augmented real estate, I see something else. What am I into? I don't know. Harry Potter.
A million trampolines.
So I'm going to trampolines.
With motorcycles on them.
Yeah.
Harry Potter's a good example.
Harry Potter,
in
right.
China.
You see
it's a different
Dobby, and he's
universe.
just waving
I
to
see
you.
Dobby, right.
And he's like,
And so
come this way.
So I was focused on architecting the software platform to enable that actually happening, and they're still working on it. And
because when you said real estate, I was thinking of more of like the really cheap. You go to like Redfin, and you can it's the virtual tour, and you like put the Google cardboard on, and you're like, I can check out this house.
So important.
Yeah.
which is
that isn't
like
really saving the world.
some
but
realtors are maybe going to get excited about that, but that's
yes, they
About
are.
it, yeah.
there's a lot of applications in AR that will make money because there are large corporations willing to put stuff in there. One of them is like augmenting furniture in your home.
Right. And
Right.
they're like,
The-
what would
the
this look
AR
like?
Exactly.
Oh, my
the AR
Yeah.
for IKEA.
Right.
Right. That's going to exist and make money.
My friend Leela's head would like explode. That's exactly what she wants.
So I
I
would
think.
furnish my house, and then all my guests would be like, no, that furniture is for other guests. Like, don't sit there.
That's their augmented real estate.
Yeah.
So we were doing this thing, right, where we could take augmented content and layer it on top of the real world, because that's what AR is all about, adding content to the real world. So we were looking at using all kinds of things, geolocation the same way that Pokemon Go does, but on top of that, actually doing tracking from your device, depth tracking, where you have multiple cameras, and you're tracking depth, you're using infrared, you're using RGB cameras, etc.
And because you can see through and you're layering, you can like walk around and it's not super dangerous, or it's slightly dangerous.
No, it's not really
Okay.
dangerous, because
Okay.
you still have full autonomy
Okay.
in your physical space.
Okay.
So I'll come back to this in 1 minute. I'll take a tangent and just talk for a minute about how augmented reality actually works.
Yeah, that's important.
Good call.
How do we put stuff on the screen and then make it line up with stuff on the table? Like if I want to put my phone here and I want to see, a hologram come out of this, how do I do that? Well, it requires tracking, first and foremost, of me and where I am in relation to the physical world. So most devices, Meta 2, Microsoft HoloLens, Magic Leap is doing something, but they're extremely secretive. Maybe we'll come back to them. I don't know what they're doing for tracking, but
What is
Realmax.
Magic Leap? Is that one that's kind of like Harry Potter but not?
Magic Leap is the ultimate startup unicorn.
Okay.
For anyone who watches Silicon Valley or is an entrepreneur and follows what's happening down at Y Combinator, Magic Leap is the unicorn, meaning they have a very secretive product that very few people have seen. They have demos. I sent all 3 of their main demos I sent. The first was like totally fake. And their most recent 2 claim to be shot through their technology, so they're more real.
Okay.
And we'll talk a bit about Magic Leap. So Meta
Tracking.
HoloLens, right, tracking.
Yeah.
You've got to track and calculate what is my exact position, and not just of me, but particularly of my eyes.
Yeah, of course.
What is the position of my eyes relative to the physical world? Because I have to use that information to position and render my content. Now, the content gets rendered on some form of screen. Most products currently are using a waveguide. There are some purely optical-based systems, which I mentioned. IMI was the first product I was working with. They have a very special product, actually, because it's a 60-degree FOV AR device, which for the last year has been unheard of. So for my whole first experience of AR was with 60 degrees. So when Microsoft comes along with, we have 30, I think it's 34, generously speaking, degrees field of view. I'm like, great, that sucks.
You just throw it to the ground.
But Microsoft has fantastic tracking because they've got this big sensor board that they did. They built their own holographic processing unit, the HPU. So just a board for processing their tracking data and things like that to do really good tracking. So even though the field of view is small, the stuff is positioned really well and it looks very authentic. It looks like, oh, if there's a Gmail icon pops up, I should say, if there's an Outlook icon that pops up, they want to Windowsify the world. So if there's a Windows icon that comes up, it looks like it's floating on top of my phone. The depth that I have for that content is good. Other systems, the depth is still a little bit hard. So I have to track where I'm at so that I can render the content on the screen, and I won't kind of go beyond that. So coming back to where I left off there.
The unicorn.
Right, you have the unicorn. We don't know what they're doing in terms of tracking.
Okay.
Leap Motion. Leap Motion's special because they are basically creating their own OLED.
I don't know what that is.
An OLED is, something LED.
Okay.
Or
Organic LED?
Organic LED, I believe is the term. If you're going to use an OLED in any kind of normal device today, I almost guarantee it's built by Sony.
An organic LED is like usually, I picture like a screen that's flexible with images on it.
Flat panel OLEDs.
Okay.
So you have little OLED somewhere in this device that's projecting your computer's image, and that gets either reflected or wave guided into your eyes. IMI uses 2 OLEDs, and they project off of a series of mirrors that bounce back into your eye. Very cool system. Provides great light projection. Not a waveguide, so there's no chromatic aberration, which is why they had a large field of view. And all that info is on their website, so I can talk about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you have all these different hardware products that have to do tracking. So why was I excited about Pokémon Go? Pokémon Go suddenly proved that people will use a system where there's augmented content layered on top of the physical world. And that was a huge proof of concept because we are basically enabling, at Realmax, we were enabling people to basically be able to put on a pair of glasses, and if Starbucks is running an AR promotion, if I'm at the Starbucks on the corner of Holly and Railroad, not the Starbucks that's 2 blocks from there.
Right.
If I'm at that Starbucks, then I'm going to see cool AR content on all of their logos.
Right.
I need to be able to then track all of the logos from my headset when I see them, which means I need to have cameras, I need to be able to do image recognition, I need to be connected to the cloud so that I know what images I'm going to be tracking. I need to be connected to the cloud to dynamically download the content and drive the sort of business logic of that content.
Yeah.
And so that's the system that I was architecting, so that basically anyone on RealMax products could put on a headset and go walk to the corner of Holly and Railroad and see Starbucks promotion.
Right.
Or maybe in Bellingham, Woods Coffee has paid to own that augmented public real estate, so that anyone walking by.
Now it's all clicking.
No,
So-
they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe if you walk by Starbucks, you're going to see a Woods Coffee advertisement in your glasses.
Wow.
No, privately, we could make any. We could right.
You could do
we could make a
anything.
group, and if you walk to the Starbucks, and you're in my group, and
Yeah.
I've put content there, you guys can see my content
Right.
because we can have infinitely, stacked augmented real estates.
Well, which brings us to pop culture, right? Like so many movies that are set in the future, like Demolition Man, where Taco Bell won the fast food wars. Please, listeners, watch this movie. It's hilarious. It's probably very dated. There's in that movie, in cartoons and Back to the Future, really most of this technology is, I think, accelerated and used by businesses, right? I mean, that's really what it is. That's what's going to motivate this. So
Pokemon Go's already in. By the way, so Pokemon Go's already about to do this paid advertising, right? And it actually happened without companies even paying for it, right? What company? Bellingham is covered with Pokestop. Railroad is covered with Pokestops, right? So because those all came from the Google's Ingress data, so points of interest that people had marked in the real world became Pokestops. So it's like the Casa que Pasa had a Pokestop on it.
right, and
So there's
Spark
Pokemon there.
Museum, who helps sponsor the show,
So
had a
suddenly-
Pokestop.
Suddenly these people are getting more business.
Right. Well, you put a lure up and you bring people there.
Because people are coming for augmented content.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we were predicting would happen slowly over the course of the next decade.
But it's happened.
And then I saw it happen in a week across the entire country
Wow.
in mobs.
Yeah.
So you can imagine. So I mean, I was in a state of shock and awe. I was just like, oh my God, it's happening now.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting.
But I
So-
bet you Nintendo was like, we knew it was going to happen.
So to answer your question, that's kind of why I was excited about Pokemon Go and why I still am. And it's not going to blow over so fast. I think people are really invested.
And I know you play it, so.
I don't. I am level 4 still.
Okay.
So let's.
That doesn't mean you haven't played it.
I have played it. I had to
Okay.
play it on principle.
Full disclosure, I've never played it.
Russell, we're
I
gonna,
almost
gonna go
downloaded
after
it
this.
before the show
Yeah.
just to experience, and then I saw that email that was like, it's bad, but
Oh,
No.
yeah.
yeah, and I was like, it's not part of my research then.
Well, so I wanna bring this question, and now that Jordan, our other co-host, he's not a big Star Trek fan. I don't know if you are, Russell. Star Trek Next Gen.
I do like it.
Okay.
I'm not as quick to reference it as some
As
people. but
I
yeah,
am.
yeah.
I want to bring up the issue of when you were talking about virtual reality, you're kind of immersed in it, and it can almost trick your senses, like you were saying. Like your brain is like, okay, this is now my reality. I can get turned. And that's in Star Trek Next Generation. They have that holodeck, and they're just in that tiny room, but all of a sudden they feel like they're hiking up a mountain because basically they're getting turned around over and over and over again. But they aren't wearing a full helmet, right? It almost is like this kind of augmented reality that it's getting layered onto what's actually there. So it's like kind of a combination of those two things. So
Kind of. Because-
I'm stretching because I like Star Trek.
Because
but-
in the holodeck, right, you can't keep climbing around the mountain and simultaneously get tangled in a cord.
Right, exactly.
Which you can do in
Right.
the virtual reality setups today. So it's a little bit different
But the
in sort of the interface, I think.
right, yes, but the future, like what I'm saying is that, is there going to be a time where there aren't going to be cords, right? When you have Google Cardboard, there's no cords, right?
Yeah, you've
It's
got
all-
to hold that one. But
Yeah.
in
Right, like where are we going? Like, what's the future of augmented reality?
I think that
That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the future of augmented reality?
Yeah.
I think that the future is going to be largely in driving graphics processing, driving tracking, and it's just going to further the cloud and sort of cloud computing and how you do lots of intense processing of tracking data and natural image recognition and things like that.
So processing so that more things can happen.
Right, so that more things
Okay.
can happen. It's going to,
Through your lenses.
Through your lenses. It's going to definitely drive wireless communication because, like you said, we don't want to be wired. People want to be tangible. It's going to drive mobile devices and mobile processing so that these become more and more powerful.
He's pointing to his phone for our listeners.
Yeah.
These
phone devices we have will become more and more, and I think AR will slowly become adopted in a lot of industries. It'll become adopted in medical, both for application and for training. It will be adopted largely for K through 12 and up and higher ed.
12
kind of
plus.
what we think of as
13,
traditional education.
13 plus.
Yeah, I could normal
Higher
academic
education.
Higher education.
There, yeah.
It'll definitely play a big role there. It'll play a role in manufacturing and things like warehouse management, distribution centers, all kinds of safety things. I've always thought of this application of, pickers in a warehouse or a distribution center can't see through, stacks of boxes, right? You can't see through an aisle.
Right.
But with AR glasses,
You can.
the AR glasses can know everything about everything that's going on in that warehouse. So the glasses
With
know.
the various cameras on the ceilings.
Right, with various cameras on the ceilings and
Yeah.
on the devices. So the glasses know that there's a forklift coming this way in this aisle, and you're walking this way, and you can see it, right?
And it knows that
Through
there's a
the
couple
aisle.
down that aisle making out.
Right. And so you can.
Finally, technology put to good use.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna touch on the security concerns because of the controversial nature.
Right. Right.
But it's not something that we will be able to ignore
Right.
in the coming year.
Right. So we're going to end this with what would you like augmented reality to do for the world? Then let's go back to your mission from from your company, because you were saying where it might go and what these things are doing, but if we can a brief what is it going to do for people that is beneficial?
I have, as you know, I have a really strong passion for education, and so I really want to see AR affect the education industry more than anything. That was the mission that I really loved at RealMax, and I kind of think back to various experiences that I had, where had I had a different educational experience, I could have a different career, right? I might be a physicist if I had been able to experience biology and physics and chemistry in a very different way. So that's where I really think it can do the most good is in education and allowing us kind of as a species to transmit information to people faster.
And in different ways.
In different ways.
Not just the one,
Right.
like you said, book open.
Right. And so at the same time, it will make it more social, more creative. I want to be able to have educational experiences, and the AR experience can be immediately shared and experienced both remotely or after the fact with my friends. So there's, and you definitely see the social component in Pokemon Go now. That's huge. That's not going to go away. So, entertainment I'm excited for because it's cool.
So I love to be entertained.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for being here, and thank you, Russell, for being my guest host today.
My
I'm going to
pleasure.
shake both of your hands like an adult.
Thank
you for
very
coming.
much for inviting
Yeah,
us.
we're going to talk about your favorite pop culture things maybe the next time you come.
Ooh, okay.
You got to think about
Awesome.
I'm gonna have to discover what
Yeah.
I like.
that. Thanks again. That was super interesting.
Yeah, of course. It's
Yeah.
fun to talk about AR.
Yeah.